The Ferrari engine of 2026 will be the true tipping point in determining whether Ferrari can return to the top of the competition. And in today's video, we will see how the development of the new engine for next year is progressing. We also need to hear Leclerc's statements, as he has spoken out about the team and the key role of Frédéric Vasseur. We need to discuss the indications given by Hamilton, McLaren's efforts to challenge Red Bull, and also the role of Rob Marshall, former Red Bull now with McLaren. Before we begin, please remember to leave a like for support, and now let's look at everything in detail. 2026 is approaching, and even though more than a year remains before the start of the new regulatory cycle, the paddock has been moving for some time. Amid doubts, bets, and strategies still to be deciphered, one certainty is beginning to emerge strongly. The Ferrari engine will be one of the major players in the new technical regulations. It's not just the numbers that matter, but also the concrete choices made by the teams, and among these is one of the most anticipated novelties of the upcoming season, namely Cadillac. The regulation change scheduled for 2026 is one of the most radical in recent years. The entire architecture of the power unit will be modified. The internal combustion engine will remain the V6 turbo, but it will be complemented by a completely redesigned hybrid system. The electric component will be much more powerful, with enhanced energy recovery totaling over 350 kilowatts estimated. The use of fully sustainable fuels will be mandatory. In this new scenario, the efficiency of the power unit will be crucial for performance. And this is where the interesting part comes in. Teams are well aware of this. The risk is that the difference between a competitive power unit and an underperforming one could condemn a team and keep them out of the points zone for the entire season. One of the most interesting elements looking ahead to 2026 is the technical collaboration between Ferrari and Cadillac. The American manufacturer making its debut in Formula 1 in 2026 has chosen Maranello as its supplier for its first venture in the circus. The agreement has been known for some time, but now technical evaluations of its true significance are beginning to emerge. James Hinchliffe, former IndyCar driver and now an official Formula 1 commentator, was very clear in a recent interview. He stated that with Ferrari engines, Cadillac could surprise right from the first year. And then they will also have Checo Perez, who has already proven he can win in Formula 1. A strong statement that positions Ferrari not only as the team to beat, but also as a central player on the 2026 grid through its customers. If the engine is truly competitive, Cadillac could accelerate its progress and join the fight in the midfield or even higher. 2026 will not only be the year of great opportunities, but also the year of significant risks. The last hybrid revolution dates back to 2014, and it's enough to remember how Mercedes dominated thanks to an almost unbeatable engine advantage for years. But just like then, there is another side to the coin: reliability issues. The new power units will be more complex and more powerful, and they will need to operate with less fuel and greater electrical efficiency. This means that the risk of breakdowns or malfunctions will once again become a decisive factor. For those who manage to design a solid and robust project from the start, this could prove to be a huge advantage. Ferrari seems to have moved well in advance to be ready. However, in recent months, there have been conflicting reports. Some rumors indicated a delay in the development of the 2026 power unit. Others spoke about Marinella's absence at some technical meetings with the federation. And some analysts speculated about difficulties in reaching energy efficiency targets. Yet Cadillac's choice to rely on the prancing horse seems to confirm confidence in the potential of this engine. The feeling is that Ferrari is working quietly, away from the spotlight to avoid the announcement effect already seen in the past. And if the cautious approach truly pays off, we might see a Ferrari power unit at the top not only in absolute performance, but also in the balance between power, fuel consumption, and reliability. This is the key issue because it's important to go fast, but also to manage consumption well and have a reliable engine. Because any zero in a season really costs a lot. With the arrival of new customer teams like Cadillac, new rules, and probably also new political scenarios in Formula 1, 2026 looks set to be a season of complete reset. Whoever has a valid engine will be able to build a competitive single-seater around it. Those who fail on the power unit front will be forced to chase. And with the complexity of the new regulations, catching up during the race will be almost impossible. Ferrari can play a key role not only as a direct constructor, but also as a technical reference for customer teams. And for a team that hasn't won a title in over 15 years, dominating with its own engine would be a first sign of a comeback. In fact, Cadillac's decision to rely on Ferrari for the construction of the power unit is an important element. It means that Cadillac believes in Ferrari's project and believes that the 2026 engine will be competitive. Otherwise, they would have easily chosen another engine manufacturer like Honda or Mercedes. But no, they specifically wanted Ferrari. And we know that the new regulations will be based on two important pillars: aerodynamics and the engine. So far, we have witnessed a frozen engine in this era, that of ground effect cars. Starting next year, the engine will be a development element for the teams. Therefore, the teams that have the best engine builders internally and that have more room for development on the engine itself and can make it reliable will have a huge advantage over the competition. And Ferrari believes it has this advantage. But we also need to hear Charles Leclerc's words on Ferrari's project. Charles Leclerc is never trivial when he speaks. And even this time, during the summer break of the 2025 World Championship, he chose to address with clarity and firmness 4 fundamental issues to understand where Ferrari truly stands today and where it wants to go. No superficial statements, no excuses, only technical analysis and leadership. A clear message directed at the team, the competition, and perhaps also at those inside the red team who continue to seek answers. The points touched on are crucial. First, the personal and professional relationship with Frederick Vasseur. Second, the threat to McLaren in comparison with Red Bull in 2023. And fourth, the rivalry with Lewis Hamilton and the team vision. Let's look at them one by one. Starting with the first, Leclerc doesn't beat around the bush. Every change in a Formula 1 team involves a period of adaptation, he stated. And in this sport, losing time means losing points. He knows this well, having experienced the transition from Riva Bene to Binotto and now the new era with Vasseur. But with Fred, it's different. Their relationship began at Sauber in 2018, but today it is something more. A natural understanding developed over time. Charles describes it this way. Sometimes, there's no need to even talk to understand each other. A level of harmony rare in Formula 1, where often between drivers and team principal, only formalities fly. And it is precisely this managerial continuity that Leclerc wants to see as an essential foundation to bring Ferrari back to the top. No more revolutions, time is needed, cohesion, and a shared vision. Regarding the second point, when a Ferrari driver states that today's McLaren is at the level of the 2023 Red Bull, it means that Maranello is fully aware of the new hierarchy on the grid. According to Leclerc, the MCL39 has no weak points. It is solid in every area, adapts to all circuits, and to 2 drivers, Norris and Piastri, capable of squeezing every second of potential from the technical setup. And here comes the punchline. In fact, Leclerc stated that they destroy the competition because they have consistency in results. In other words, they do not rely on a single superstar, like Red Bull with Verstappen, but on a perfectly functioning system. This McLaren is dangerous not only for the constructors' title, but also for Ferrari's self-esteem, which finds itself forced to chase. Until 2 years ago, he fought to enter Q3. The most technical point touched on by Charles concerns the 2025 single-seater, namely the SF25, which after mid-season updates was expected to turn things around. Instead, the leap forward was smaller than expected. Leclerc clearly states, "We had to use extreme setups to make it work." This means 2 things: the margin for maneuver on a setup is very limited, and the aerodynamic and mechanical package does not offer versatility on all tracks. Despite this, Leclerc claims to have extracted the maximum possible from the car in every weekend so far, but this unstable balance is a price that those who cannot adapt to it suffer. And indeed, the performance of his teammate Hamilton is implicit. The SF25 can only be driven at the limit if you have complete confidence in its instability. And it is here that Leclerc touched on the most important issue, namely the relationship with Hamilton. Leclerc does not deny that the 7-time world champion is going through a difficult phase, but he does not do so to criticize him. "I understand his difficulties," said Charles, "but I am confident that his performance will change in the second half of the season." This confidence is accompanied by an honest mission. "Of course, I want to be ahead of him, but the good of Ferrari comes first." A phrase that is worth more than 1,000 PR statements, because in a team like Ferrari, where internal pressure can wear down even the best, as seen with Vettel and Leclerc in 2019, it is essential that the rivalry remains functional and constructive. And Leclerc today is much more than just a driver. He knows the limits of the chassis, understands how team dynamics work, analyzes rivals, and speaks with knowledge of the managerial decisions made within Ferrari. And even Vasseur, who is now ready for a renewal at Ferrari, has announced that he wants to return to winning with the red car in the second half of the 2025 season, to give an initial signal before the technical change next year. These victories are much more likely to come first with Leclerc and Hamilton, because the Monegasque is more comfortable with the car, and it will be interesting to see if the trend from the first part of this year's Hungarian race will be confirmed in the upcoming races, because at that moment, Charles was on par with the McLarens. And that's not something to rule out, because later in the second pit stop, Leclerc had a car issue, had to lift the car to avoid excessive wear on the floor, so we will see if Ferrari manages to adjust the setup for the upcoming races. We might find a Ferrari fighting for victories. Maybe even at Monza, which has been a very friendly track for the red team in recent years. But let's also talk about Hamilton's role in Ferrari today. Hamilton is more like the hungry young driver from 2007, but remains an experienced driver. His decline, if there has been one, is more mental than technical. Lewis comes from a team like Mercedes that has nurtured, supported, and protected him for years. At Ferrari, however, he finds himself in a more rigid environment, less empathetic and definitely less functional, and when the feeling is lacking, performance also suffers. It has always been like that, even back in the McLaren days. Hamilton needs emotional and technical stability to perform at his best. That is precisely why Sir Lewis has decided to do something rare in Formula 1, to step out of the cockpit and give instructions also off the track. Files, suggestions, documents, call them what you will. The point is that Hamilton is trying to transfer Mercedes' winning operational culture to Maranello, especially in internal processes. In every normal team, newcomers bring experience, methods, and solutions. At Ferrari, this is more difficult. And here we arrive at the central point. The Maranello team always has a characteristic that sets it apart from all other top teams: the fact of being self-referential. And this is also confirmed by Gino Rosado, a former key figure within the team. He revealed something very important. In Lotus, the ratio was 70% work and 30% politics. At Ferrari, sometimes it's 60% politics and 40% work. A statement that weighs like a heavy stone, because if the internal structure is so entangled in bureaucracy and power games, then even Hamilton won't be enough to change it. Another significant mistake, already pointed out by many observers, is that Ferrari let Drenouille slip away. A golden and perhaps unrepeatable opportunity that could have changed the fate of the entire 2026 project. But in the end, as often happens in Maranello, internal dynamics prevailed over the technical vision. And this raises a crucial doubt. Is Maranello truly willing to trust someone from outside? The near future will be decisive, and with the new technical regulations, 2026 represents a crucial turning point. The real challenge will be Ferrari's ability to listen to Hamilton. Of course, developing the most performing car possible is important, but it is equally important to listen to the working method of a 7-time world champion who comes from a highly successful team like Mercedes. Therefore, Ferrari's somewhat closed mindset should sometimes be expanded. It is also important to listen to those from outside, not just those inside. This is what Jean Todt did with Michael Schumacher during the victories in red. They built a team from scratch with external elements joining Ferrari. This led to the creation of the best team in Formula 1. Ferrari also owes a lot to Lewis Hamilton. In fact, let's look at the earnings issue. While the results on the track remain below expectations, the Maranello racing team earns a much more tangible result outside the circuits. Thanks to Lewis Hamilton's arrival, Ferrari generated an estimated 70 million euros in revenue just in 2025, thanks to the commercial impact brought by the 7-time world champion. In 2018, Ferrari's then CEO, Luis Camilleri, compared Sebastian Vettel and Cristiano Ronaldo, fresh from his sensational arrival at Juventus. But while the CR7 effect for the buying canary proved to be an economic boomerang worsened by COVID, the Hamilton operation is a whole different story. According to detailed estimates, Hamilton's presence at Ferrari has already generated an additional 70 million euros in 2025 alone, from new sponsorships, Formula 1 prizes, and licensing. And all this without even winning a Grand Prix. Official figures range from 313 to 396 million in 6 months. Between the first half of 2024 with 313 million earned and the first half of 2025 with 396 million. An annual base increase of over 83 million is estimated. 30 to 40 million derived from the best placement in Formula 1. Ferrari second in 2024 compared to third place in 2023. And 40 to 50 million thanks to new commercial partnerships gained through Hamilton's arrival. One name above all is HP, which returned as the title sponsor of the team after 3 years of absence, precisely with the announcement of Hamilton's operation. Besides sponsors, Hamilton is not just a driver, he is a global brand. And so he has enabled more merchandise sales, and has allowed an estimated growth of 20 to 30 million euros, with various sales of branded products, fashion collaborations, and licensing and exploitation of his image for events, communication, and global campaigns. After 14 Grands Prix with the SF25, the sporting results were disappointing, we must say. Yet the commercial machine definitely moved, with Ferrari's expansion into markets like the USA, UK, and Asia, where Hamilton is an icon. And if we have seen commercial growth from Ferrari, thanks to Hamilton's arrival, with new sponsors joining Ferrari, increased sales in merchandise globally. But we want to see a competitive Hamilton in Formula 1. Otherwise, this wow effect that Ferrari received with this initial boost at the beginning of 2025 will soon fade away as fans start to turn against the red team for signing a driver at the end of his career. So, we must hope that in 2026 Hamilton performs well, that he is competitive, at least at the level of Leclerc, to fight up front, among the positions he is entitled to. But let's also talk about Red Bull and McLaren, because there is a challenge between these two teams. We need to discuss Red Bull and Racing Bulls, because McLaren accuses and the FIA observes. The issue has been known for years, and in 2025 it has come back into focus. Are satellite teams in Formula 1 truly independent? Do some enjoy the structural advantages that compromise the fairness of the championship? The target once again is Red Bull, or rather, the very close relationship between the Milton Keynes team and Racing Bulls. In theory, every Formula 1 team should be an independent entity, but in reality, some share ownership, personnel, and interests. In the case of Red Bull, control over Racing Bulls is almost total. Same ownership, component exchanges allowed by the regulations, and operational synergies at minimal cost. And this has not gone unnoticed, especially after the Lauren McKee case. The former Ferrari driver moved from Racing Bulls to Red Bull, without even the usual gardening leave period, a detail that raised eyebrows among many, and particularly at McLaren. Andrea Stella stated, "A more fair framework is needed, otherwise, it's not sport. It's a complex issue to address," he declared simplistically. But each team must operate independently to protect the integrity of the sport. The issue is not only ethical, but also technical. In fact, a satellite team can develop solutions tested elsewhere. It can benefit from the strategic information of the main team, and it can indirectly influence the race for the title. For example, by disrupting rivals' race strategies. And all this, according to McLaren, undermines the credibility of the championship. The federation has announced that it will consider a revision of the rules regarding the independence between one team and another. The goal is to introduce stricter limits to prevent direct or indirect interference between related teams. For example, between Red Bull and Racing Bulls. So what does Red Bull really risk? It risks that each team has its own infrastructure. Therefore, Red Bull and Racing Bulls would be separate. Personnel would not be able to move freely from one team to another without filters, as in the case of Lauren McKee, who moved from Racing Bulls team principal to Red Bull team principal. And the technical partnerships should be limited and transparent. So, even in the use of their own power units, there is a difference. And surely, this is a topic that also closely affects McLaren, which does not have customer teams, because it is itself a customer team of Mercedes, if we want, using the engine of the Brackley team, which has its engine headquarters in Brickworth. But at the same time, Red Bull definitely benefits from having a satellite team like Racing Bulls, which can carry out parallel development alongside Red Bull, even in the case of a new regulatory era. Even in the case of a new regulatory era like next year's. Carrying out parallel development is like they are developing two cars simultaneously, and then they will unify into a single project. This is a significant advantage both for Red Bull itself and for Racing Bulls, which can also help each other on the track. Here, we need a bit more clarity on this point. And I agree with McLaren's position. A clearer distinction is needed between what is allowed and what is not, between a satellite team and a main team. Let me know in the comments what you think about all the topics we covered in the video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you don't miss any news related to Formula 1 and Ferrari. That's all from RS. See you in the next video.